Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Adam Makes Beer podcast. How's everybody doing out there? It's been a wild time here outside the city of Cincinnati, the city with no pity, as I like to call it. Now, granted, I live like an hour outside of Cincinnati, but it's been hot, people. It's been hot. If you're finding yourself in a brewery, drink some water, stay cool, take care of yourself. If you're on the other side of the world and it's cooling down, enjoy the normal temperatures inside the brewery. But right now, it's getting balmy up here in June, everybody. It's getting balmy in June. Today is episode 60 of the Adam Makes Beer podcast. Today is a career development pod entitled It's Not About You, Growing as a Mentor. Before we get going, let me give a shout out to our fantastic sponsors that make content like this possible. Starting a brewery is a big step. Blickman Engineering is here to help. Since 2006, they've equipped hundreds of nano breweries for success. Their new 3.5 barrel Pro Surface electric brewing system cuts maintenance and saves at least 30 minutes per brew day with powerful under kettle heating. From 1 to 15 barrel brew houses to keg washers, grain mills, Blickman has what you need. Ready to go pro? Contact Phil or Tom at ProSeries@BlickmanEngineering.com. Blickman Engineering is a proud sponsor of this channel and loves to help brewers at every stage of their journey. Tracking and managing the financial health of your business is a primary pillar of success. Check out my boy David Lenza at Brewed Fiscally. This man has the industry experience and skills you need so you can focus on growing your business. Bookkeeping, fractional CFO support, financial management system design, business plan and review, hit up your boy. Check him out at brewedfiscally.com or shoot him an email at david@brewedfiscally.com. He's good people. Hey, shout out real quick before we start rolling into the topic. I was just up in the land, as some call it. I was just up in Cleveland at Market Garden Brewery, and my friends at LD Carlson, the two of us paired up to feature some avant-garde malts. They have a beer up there called Prosperity Wheat. If you didn't know, maybe you should, because it took gold medal in GABF for half. So get over there and drink it. We did a whole behind the scenes on that. So if you haven't checked that out, you want to. It is a good one. We do all sorts of things. We do, obviously, all the full brew day stuff. We do, you ever wondered how to handle a super sack, ladies and gentlemen? We do it in that video. Have you ever seen a malt cleaner as part of a mill before? Well, you will if you see this. We talk making hef. We taste some hef. We go all the way through that place. It is a ton of fun. We even do grist analysis. Was that a little voice crack? We even do grist analysis. We have those sieves out there and we're shaking those boys. It's the first time I've seen one of the official grist shakers, not what it's called. But that is live on YouTube. I tell you what, there's probably nothing your significant other would love more than to jump on the couch with you this evening and watch me talk about beer for 80 minutes as we brew some beer over there at Market Garden. But anyways, good folks over there. You're going to want to check it out. I've got some new stuff coming up. For those people that are on the home side, even though we usually do pro size stuff, for those of you on the home side, I've got a big old anvil brew day coming for you. I got together with some fellas in the area to help them brew on their new anvil system. So that's going to be coming up. I mean, listen, maybe a brew day at Little Miami. What? Okay. So there's stuff coming down the pipelines, ladies and gentlemen. Stay liking, sharing. all that stuff. And also check out my Substack. I just started a Substack where you can find articles, blog style articles on anything from technical brewing topics, like digging into phosphoric and lactic acid, which actually was part of my interview with John Palmer, but it's up there on Substack now, baby. Do you want 6 tips or 6 things, 6 ways to have a successful career in the brewing industry? Post up there on Substack. Check it out. Give me some likes on there. Share it out to the people. Okay. But that's not why you're here right now. You're not here. Well, maybe you are. Maybe you are interested in hearing a little catch up on what I got going on. I haven't done a Q&A in a minute, so I haven't had a lot of outlets for letting you know what's going on with me. But, this is the second part of this series on career development that I wanted to do. A lot of people have been asking for it, and I figured, why not? Let's dig into this as part of the typical technical stuff that we do. Let's do a little career stuff as well. And last week we did a podcast on Simon Sinek's Start With Why. What is your why? There's a worksheet that you can follow along with. Help to derive a little bit of direction, a little bit of meaning, some goals for yourself professionally. I think it's very worthwhile. Go check that one out. Like I said, there's a worksheet in the description on that, so you can kind of work on that and kind of get some benefit out of yourself. But when I was live on the last one, somebody popped into the chat and they were asking about topics surrounding mentorship, and they were specifically asking about what to look for in a mentor. And so I'm gonna do that this week, but we're gonna kind of reverse engineer it. Okay, you can take this podcast in a few different ways. You can look at it as, hey, what are the things to look for in a mentor, and you can kind of pull stuff out from that. I already am in the position to be a mentor. I'm speaking directly to you as well. But then also that person of, I'm looking to get better. I'm looking to grow within my company. All the things that we're talking about doing are going to be, or a lot of the things we're going to be talking about doing are going to be very applicable there as well. So being a mentor is something that I'm very passionate about. One of the reasons that, you've probably heard me say before that I taught at-risk kids for 10 years. I decided in high school that I was going to do something to help teenage kids. I lost my brother when I was a teenager. He was 13. I was 13. He was 16. And he took his own life. And I think that was one of the big driving factors toward me saying, I want to work with people, especially young people, right? And so I did that for the first 10 years of my career, and then I kind of lost focus of it when I got focused on, being a pro brewer, right? So it's interesting that as my pro brewing career continues to evolve, this concept of, or this theme of mentorship becomes stronger and stronger for me. Because if you listen to the last podcast, that's a big part of my joy as a professional, is helping to develop people. And I also see that this channel is an outreach of that as well. So that's why we are digging into mentorship today. I see some folks hanging out in there. Good to see everybody in there. Please give me a shout. Let me know where you're listening from. Welcome to everybody. If you do have a question, you can drop it in there, and maybe I can get to that and have something to offer for you. But I called this podcast "It's Not About You," right? And we're gonna dig into why I did, and as you can see, kind of a theme with this series is I'm always going to have real world examples of how I dropped the ball surrounding these topics. I never want to come off as somebody that's just like, oh, I just have all the answers. I've just done it all right all the time. And that's not what I'm talking about. For me, I've certainly had to fail, and then get better from there, right? I think that's actually part of the process. So, when I was first leaving teaching and getting into the brewery side of things, I was immediately in a leadership position. I was hired in as head brewer at a place called Cranker's Brewery in Big Rapids, Michigan. Go Bulldogs or Cardinals, depending on whether you want to talk university or high school. And during that time, I had a few people that were under my leadership. One is a dear friend of mine, Andy. If you're a longtime listener or follower of the podcast, you've seen him on some industry pro interviews that I've done, talking hazies and some different things. We were more peers in a lot of ways. I was the one certainly responsible for things. But Andy was a similar age. He's a little bit older than me. And he was one of those people that was like no management required, right? Like he, when sometimes people will say, work like you own it or something like that. Andy definitely does that. He's one of those people where you just have complete trust in what he's going to do day to day in the workplace. Smart, savvy, hardworking guy. And so Andy, we would have we were friends. We're friends now. And so we'd talk, we'd joke, we'd mess around. And it always felt like it was happening on a peer-to-peer level. And then after a while, we hired another guy. And this was Chris. Chris, you've also seen on the podcast. If you follow my Instagram feed, Chris won I believe, bronze medal at World Beer Cup for his alt beer, that Savage, putting alt beer in there. But, Chris was fresh out of college, and he did not have the homebrewing background Andy did. So he was learning everything new. Now, I will say Chris picked up everything super fast, like from a process standpoint, from, understanding what to do on the brew deck, the steps, all those things came very, very quickly. He didn't have all the background knowledge, all the why stuff like Andy did. But anyways, he was great too. Hard worker. But he was clearly a different generation than me, right? So I think there's probably 15 years between us, I'm guessing, at least, maybe a little less, but there's a solid age gap there. And I started joking around with Chris the way I would joke around with Andy. And it started to feel a little bit different, though, because we didn't have the peer-to-peer kind of relationship that Andy and I had. It was a little bit more, leader and employee. And not to say that we weren't friends or friendly or friends today, but there was a different dynamic. And I realized at one point, when we were having a beer after work and we were teasing each other, it hit me that maybe the stuff that I was saying, because when you're hanging out, kind of just razzing each other, riffing, whatever, you're always trying to one up the other person. And then I realized maybe I was putting Chris in a bad position, because if we're playing a game like that, at some point he's going to be saying something, it's going to be funny, but it's definitely going to be pushing boundaries, and I'm his boss, And I wasn't trying to leverage that over him, but I became very aware of it, and quite honestly, very embarrassed that I had kind of created that situation. And Also at that time, I was like a younger dad, and I feel like I was like dadding on him sometimes when that wasn't my place. You know what I mean? And I think that if I had had a different perspective, if my eyes had been focused on a different target, that I could have avoided something like that. I hadn't been looking at things through Chris's eyes. Like his boss, we're joking around, riffing, whatever, and maybe like, yeah, maybe I'm joking too far, and it compels him to want to as well. It's just a bad situation. And I'll be honest, it's almost as if I created those like friendship style management situations because I was uncomfortable with the notion of management. And maybe that's why I didn't take a different approach. You know, today we're talking about mentorship. I think it's a skill that can be developed, and it's a responsibility on some level for every person that manages. For those of you who aren't in management, there's stuff in here for you too. It's not that. And again, you know, I'm calling this episode, It's Not About You. Maybe it's just my perspective, but I feel as if one of my lifelong struggles has been that my focus is turned inward on myself. I feel that my focus is turned inward on myself. I find myself hyper-focused on questions like, how do I feel? How does this affect me? What do I have to do to make this person happy? Everyone keeps getting in my way. There's a range of different things, but they're all very self-focused. There's nothing wrong with being self-aware of any of these things that I mentioned. There's nothing wrong with being self-aware. In my case, I felt like I was a bit hyper self-aware. And it was because I focused so much on myself and how I was getting through the day and how I was thinking and feeling about things that it didn't create the opportunity for me to see things from another vantage point. This inability to fully see those around me capped my ceiling as a leader and a mentor. So let's actually like dig into a definition of what a mentor is. And for the purposes of this podcast, a mentor is an experienced individual who provides guidance and support to a less experienced person, known as a mentee. That's one of those funny words, to help them develop their skills and reach their full potential. What I love about that definition is, notice it doesn't say that a mentor is an expert. A mentor is the best. The mentor is infallible. It doesn't say any of those things. It says the mentor is experienced. It doesn't say the most experienced. It means the mentor has something to offer. Sometimes we exclude ourselves from the idea or responsibility of being a mentor because we think we have to be the expert. I remember the fear that I had walking into my first school, and it was an alternative school. I was working with at-risk kids, and I remember like it was wild. You know what I mean? The teachers were on first name basis, so they would call me Adam. I've never been called Mr. Mills in the history of my teaching career, all 10 years. I was always called by my first name per school policies. And yeah, it was it was pretty crazy. I knew I was teaching history, and it was one of those things I was always afraid I was going to have somebody ask me a question I didn't know the answer to, and then they would know I was a fraud, right? There's a lot of freedom in learning how to say, whether you're a teacher, a mentor, anything like that. There's a lot of freedom in being able to say, I don't know, but let's find out. You don't have to be the one that knows everything. I think that there's some really important questions to ask when we get into talking about why we want to be mentors. Sometimes we think about it like that. Oh, that's something that I would like, right? And so for me, mentorship, means leading beyond yourself, seeing beyond yourself. Again, the core concept of it's not about you. So let's talk about the role of ego and how it relates to being a mentor. In my experience, ego is a liability. You can't lead well if you're still trying to be the smartest person in the room. When you're in that spot, your brain, you're sweating, you're scrambling, you're stepping on other people's words to get your words out to show them that you know what you're talking about. When you're in that space, you're not aware of what's going on with the people around you. If you want to be a mentor, it means that you have to flip the switch, diminish that ego. No more proving yourself. It's about the people you're working with at that point. It's good to do some self-reflection. You're going to hear us talk a lot about self-reflection, but throughout this, all these talks probably. But are you mentoring because you want a follower? Because it feels good to have somebody, looking up to you, respecting you? Or is it because you want someone to eventually outgrow you? You could put it another way and say, or is your motivation that you want to see that person become everything that they can become? A key portion to being a mentor is being able to give responsibility or to let go of some of your responsibilities. The last spot I was at, Sonder, one of the things I told them in my interview is that I was going to be able to develop their team, right? That I can help people level up. In order to do that, you have to give responsibility. Okay? But I've been in situations myself where I've been the one doing this, and I've been in other situations where I've seen other people do it. But sometimes people hoard responsibility. They want to keep it for themselves for whatever reason. Sometimes they want it done right. Sometimes they just want to hold on to the power. Sometimes they want to preserve their value, right? But giving responsibility to someone is good. You can test with it. You can measure with it. Giving responsibilities to people is a key point in the mentoring process. I listened to this. Actually, I didn't listen to it. I read a book by Adam Grant. I forget which one it was, but he was talking about the number of times you need to fail in order to become great at something. And he was talking about, I believe the word is polyglots, people that can speak a ton of different languages. And maybe that's not the word at all, and I'm just some fool, but stick with me. He spoke to a whole bunch of these people that could speak multiple languages. And one of the interesting things that jumped out is one of the people were saying that they try to go out and make as many mistakes as possible in a day. Maybe they said like 100 mistakes or 200 mistakes a day speaking the language, because they know that's where their proficiency will come from. And sometimes we avoid that discomfort, right? But I think that discomfort and growth, they live on the same block, you know. They're just kind of right around the corner from each other, you know. I think if we want to grow ourselves or help facilitate growth for someone else, we do have to introduce discomfort. And sometimes that can come through giving people responsibilities. Okay. You know, I do say that the title of this talk is It's Not About You. And kind of the second segment of this thing is it's going to talk about you. All right. But it's more on the self-knowledge side. You know, you have to know yourself first. The main concept here is you can't give what you haven't earned. You can't have self-awareness without being self-obsessed. That's something that has been part of my growth over the years. You know, going through periods of my life where I was probably a bit more self-obsessed rather than self-aware. But, you know, last week when we talked about the start with why and the worksheet and everything like that, you know, talking about the things that you're passionate about, the things that you're excellent at. I think it's really important to be able to get that feedback. And sometimes it can be internal, something that we do through thought exercises, through journaling, through working through worksheets, things like that. But then sometimes that can come from talking to spouses, loved ones, family, friends, coworkers, and asking them to try to help give you, you know, what's something that I bring to the table on the good side? What's something I need to work on, right? And tell them to have some charity when they give their feedback. But I think it's really important. You know, one of the biggest blessings of my life is when my wife, when we were kids, I mean, it was a long time ago, man. And we've been together since 1997. My sophomore year, her freshman year of college. And the best thing that's ever happened to me was her telling me that she was going to love me for the rest of my life. One of the amazing things that my wife does for me is she listens, but she also has the nerve and the guts to give me honest feedback. Sometimes it's difficult stuff, you know, hard to hear stuff. But sometimes it's actually just helping me see who I am, you know, the way other people see me, because I can have, you know, like real negative self-views, you know. So yeah, have some people that you can actually talk to. You can do a little work on this yourself, but you can also talk to some people as well and try to dig into, you know, what are you truly excellent at? Like, what are some of the things that you can definitely bring to the table to help develop other people? But there's a flip side to that too. It's think about the challenges that you've had to face and that you've overcome, right? Because sometimes in a mentor-mentee situation, I just said situationship. Sometimes in that case, it can just feel like, oh, the mentor's got it all figured out, right? And that can add additional pressure to the person that is being formed. So it is important for people that we are leading, mentoring, managing, for them to see those weaknesses with us too, because they know then that it's okay to actually have a growth path, right? You just weren't plopped into the brewery as this fully formed thing, right? So with all that said, one of the ways I failed as a mentor is to expect others to want to learn and grow the way I do. This is an example of my focus being turned inward, not allowing me to see other people's perspectives. Maybe it was just because like the group, like the circle of brewers that I keep, but I mean every brewer that I'm close to, they're a grinder, man. They're out there learning, getting better, being meticulous, staying up on new information, all these things because they just want to be great at it. You know what I mean? And it came a time in my career where I was working with folks that were happy having a job at a brewery, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with it. It was it kind of knocked my socks off, though. I'm not gonna lie, and for a period of time, it was difficult because I had that self-focus so much of saying, oh, well, this is, in my mind, this is what a brewer is. Like, they're always grinding, always trying to get better, always learning new things, always trying new things. And then for some people where it's just like, hey, it's a job and I like the job and I like the scene, that was really, really foreign to me. And it actually jammed me up a little bit from a leadership and even coworker standpoint, right? But I actually had to step back, and it was through conversations with my wife and sometimes with my friends. And they're like, and I heard them say, like, Adam, listen, not everybody's going to have like the goals that you have as a brewer, right? That's just not the case. So, it helped me step back and kind of reframe that a little bit. It's important to examine these things and trust being yourself, not playing a role of the mentor. It's like when you see, like, sometimes you see like highlights on YouTube of like kids playing basketball or whatever. And so this generation does this like arm down like thing that like nobody did ever. To me, it's a very Nate Diaz thing. After choking out Conor McGregor, I don't know if it started there or whatever, but all the young people celebrate this way. And they're imitating something. Well, this is what pros do, right? This is what the famous people that I love, that I model myself have. This is how they celebrate. This is how I celebrate, right? And for me in particular, you could ask my friends from college. I was when I got into college and playing just like for fun basketball with my friends, I was a trash talker, and I got better, like kind of a little bit, but I was kind of fragile ego, super competitive. And I loved the Fab Five. Yes, that is how old I am. When shorts were long, the first long shorts, black socks, shaved head, never shaved my head. But we model ourselves after things. We're almost playing a role, right? We're almost playing a role. And the problem is when we're focused on like being this mentor or being a leader, and we're like trying to act like this thing, it doesn't come off as authentic. People smell that stuff from a mile away, and then you lose trust. Authenticity inspires trust. When people see you're aware of your strengths and limits, that you're being real, you're being yourself, you're not playing some role, they're more likely to want to grow around you and with you. This next segment, when it comes to some of the vital things for being a quality mentor, is tell the truth even when it's difficult. In my experience, it's the nice boss or nice mentor that often fails people the most. When I was the nice boss, the nice mentor, whatever, that was the worst leader that I ever was. And let's clarify what I mean by nice. I think sometimes we're like, I want to treat my people well. I want to be nice. I want to talk to them with respect. But what we do is we don't have the nerve to actually call out behavior that needs to be addressed. So we eat those little experiences. We watch. You ask somebody to not do something and they say, okay, but then you see them do it again and again. And you start getting more and more angry rather than having the difficult conversation early on. It's because people want to be a nice boss. I think it's really important to give honest feedback to people. It actually does equate to respect. If you're working for me and the quality of your work is low, you need to be called out. There is a process for all of those things. But if I allow somebody to stay on staff with behavior that's not employable anywhere else, I'm doing myself a disservice, the business a disservice, and that person a disservice. I also believe that avoiding difficult conversations creates resentment with teams, and it stunts team development, team culture, team unity. Consistency is very important. Now, one of the things that I do think is important with this is that doesn't mean that everybody gets managed the same. I manage different personality types. I mentor different personality types differently. If you listen to people, they will tell you what you need. If you sit down and really listen to someone, they will tell you what they need or what they want or what they respect. You just need to listen for it. On some level, if your people aren't improving and you're not telling them where they're falling short, that lack of improvement is on you as the mentor, as the leader. I think it's really important to have regular meetings with people, talking about goals. There's tons of resources out there for stuff like that, but you actually have to be speaking to your people. When there is a coachable moment, or however you want to, I keep hitting my mic today. If there is a coachable moment or with someone you manage, there's some keys that I like to stick to. I like to be prepared. I like to be clear, and I like to stick to observable behaviors. If there's an issue that I'm having with somebody from a performance standpoint at work, whether it be performance, interpersonal, what have you, I make bullet point lists and I edit them to remove me and my feelings from the observations. I have my wife read the list, or somebody else read the list, not at work, like another professional friend of yours or something, maybe even outside the industry, but right. Just make sure that this is not an emotion fueled thing. It has nothing to do with me. Okay. And then sit down and have that conversation. I think it's very, very important to praise in public and to correct in private. But again, don't use niceness as an excuse, because typically when people when people mess up in that direction, which I have, it builds resentment. I've just treated, man, I've been so nice to this guy. I've been so nice to her. And then they just keep doing this thing and it's driving me crazy. Don't use niceness as an excuse. We need to accept the fact that there are times when you need to correct a team member's performance or behavior. In order to do that, though, you need to have guidelines, parameters. We'll use the term SOP here because we're brewing people. But, the main concept here is, let's set clear expectations. Use your systems at work to support growth. There is something interesting about what we do. We are in a process-driven business. We're supposed to be following processes, okay? If you don't have those things written down, if you don't have clear expectations, in some cases checklists, you're asking for trouble, not just on the quality side with your beer, but also from an accountability side with the people that you're trying to help grow. Set clear expectations, use systems to support growth. If you want your team to succeed, give them a map. SOPs aren't bureaucracy, they're a scaffolding. We're not just creating red tape for people, we're creating a support system around them. On the practical side, document your processes. Show people what success looks like. To me, I think that's one of the biggest issues is when we don't show people, we don't tell people what success looks like. I always think what I always love talking to people about when we talk about, okay, well, I want to raise, I want to grow with this company. Okay, well, here's the next step up for you in the company. People that are hitting this level do X, Y, and Z. And then you have a list of things that they display or ways that they grow, right? Or what they bring to the table. Give them something to aim at. So in a very practical standpoint, document your processes. Show people what success looks like, whether that's SOPs, checklists. Review SOPs with new hires, not just in HR orientation. Brewing is a process-centric game. If you don't have clear guidelines and parameters for your people, you're setting them and yourself up for failure. Again, it's nearly impossible to hit the target that you cannot see. Clarity of vision builds confidence. And that's what you want to be fostering in somebody that you are mentoring. The idea is that they leave the nest one day, right? So we want to build that confidence. People want to know the rules of the game so they can play it well. Sometimes in our industry, I think we're very worried about being corporate. I hear that a lot in small breweries. I probably said it myself. There's some nice things about it, but things can get weird when you don't have certain guardrails. And not that you want to just have a million checklists and somebody's always sweating this, that, or the other thing, but you need to have those parameters in place for your people. Next up, I'm not sure how I feel about this phrase, but we'll riff on it, okay? Mentorship means empathy. You want to be able to see through their eyes with their perspective, or to walk a mile in those shoes. You remember your first brew day, your first day in the cellar, trying to learn new SOPs at a new place. You weren't sure where to put your lunch. You've got to travel back to that spot in your head when you want to be leading. You have to be thinking about where your people can be at. Not just, is it a new person, but is it a person that's been here and they're just they're kind of rudderless? Hey, Adam, I've been doing, this job for the last 3 years. I'm not really crazy about doing it, but I do it. And I don't know if there's a plan for me going forward. I wonder if I should be looking for another job. So, this mentoring leadership role just isn't for like new hires and everything like that, but it's trying to help facilitate that path for everyone. You're going to want to mentor the struggling employee differently than you do the elite performer. Everybody needs a carrot. Find out what that carrot is for them. It can be nuts and bolts, very clear for somebody who's a struggling employee, a new employee. You have to get them up to snuff on processes and what they're supposed to be doing at work. But sometimes the high level performer, what do you do with them? I think they're somebody very important. Again, it's important to have that conversation with everybody, but find out what's important to them and see if you can create opportunities for them. Personally, and I know it's lean out there in the industry right now, but if I were in a situation like this, I don't think that it's a given that everybody goes to conferences. There's a period of time everybody used to go to conferences. In my mind, I want to reward people that I know want to grow. They bring that personal responsibility to work. They're bringing new ideas, new research. They're grinding to get better. That's the person that I want to send to the MBA conference, not somebody who's jobbing it. And there's nothing wrong with just doing it for a job, but if you don't even know the stuff that they're talking about in the conference, I don't know, anyways, but, really, look for ways to reward people at whatever level they're at. Oftentimes I find my role becomes more of a facilitator with my high performers. With the employees that struggle, I typically find myself in a place where I'm helping them to find wins to build confidence. Sometimes we look at something and we have this entire thing. I was just about to make up something that doesn't exist. But is there something about like eating an elephant one bite at a time? Is that a saying? Is that a colloquialism? No, that's not that either. But anyways, sometimes when somebody is struggling, the larger task can seem too overwhelming, and we have to break that down. We have to piece that out for them and start giving them small wins on the path to the whole puzzle, right? Because it is key to build that confidence. I take very seriously being an active listener when I'm inquiring about what they're struggling with. I like to ask questions like, what's been the hardest thing for you this month? What's been your biggest struggle this month? What does success look like for you? If you told me work was going great, what would that look like? What's something you want to understand that you don't understand but want to about what we're doing, right? Ask questions like that, get that feedback, and then you can kind of start building those plans for them. Know their goals and believe for them. And I personally think that this is one of the things that's kind of the superpower in the whole thing. Great mentors see potential before it fully surfaces. Great mentors see potential before it fully surfaces. I see more in you than you do. My best example of this is my children and how I see their capabilities. There's always that thing like, oh, My kid, though, they could be a doctor, they could be an astronaut, they could be, all these different things, whatever. It was always doctor and astronaut when I was a kid. But when you look at it through that lens, like your children, obviously it's not like the same attachment. But parents are always seeing the possibility with their kids, or hopefully they are. Hopefully they are. And I think as a mentor, we have to put ourselves in that headspace. Sometimes we need to see more in them than they see in themselves. We kind of talk about building trust, building loyalty, building connection with people. Some of the most loyal brewers I've worked with didn't start out that way. I've had some rough relationships with some people that I've managed. They needed someone to see past the mistakes and call out who they could be. It can be one of the frustrating things about the role of leadership or mentor, being the mentor. But we have to keep in mind that mentorship, being a mentor, leadership is service. Service means believing in someone enough to invest even when there's no immediate return, or potentially no return that you will ever see. Remember, mentoring isn't about you, it's about them. You don't only do this so you have a great work environment, so it makes work nicer. You do this because you respect the dignity of the human person. You do this because you respect the dignity of the human person. Mentorship isn't just about accountability. It's about building capability. That takes vision and patience. Help them see the ways they can grow. Create opportunities to facilitate that growth. And keep you out of it. Your ego out of it. But you do have to be observant. You have to watch your people. Don't be creepy, but be observant. You want to become somebody who notices body language, interpersonal interactions between people, between other people, rather than how they interact with you. Sometimes people will be like, if you're in a management type of thing, oh, hey, boss, how's it going? Everything's great. Everything's great. And then they go over and talk to one of their friends and their shoulders are down. And and you can just see that that's not actually what's going on. They had that mask up because they were talking to their boss. Watch at meetings. When I'm in meetings, I'll be honest, I'm not always the best listener at me. I forget things. I don't listen. Sometimes my brain's intense, okay? But one of the things when I first started working at Sonder, there was multiple times during meetings where I was asked if I had a question. And I didn't. I was just really intently looking at the person I was really intently looking at the people around that table because I wanted to understand what was going on around me. Because there's the words that people say, and then there's the emotions that they tell you when you're observant, right? So I am attentive in meetings, right? Always keep those eyes open. On the practical tip side, when you're communicating with your people and you do have time for that sit down, you can do your classic, 1 year, 5-year goals. But I'm a fan of even shorter term goals than that. Sometimes, depending on where people are at, 1 year is too long. 6 months, 3 months, 1 month, 1 week. Sometimes when somebody's in a bad spot or there's something glaring that they have going on, let's do tomorrow. Let's do today. Let's do 1 day. Always to discuss the strengths you see in them that they may not see. Give them opportunities to stretch and grow, an opportunity to fail safely. To kind of wrap this up, growing as a mentor means choosing to think differently about leadership. It means choosing long-term wins over short-term comfort. It's not about being the hero of your team. It's about raising up a team of people aiming at improvement. Just a quick recap. It's not all about you. Dial back the ego. Nice boss doesn't mean good boss. See more in others than maybe they see in themselves. And also this awareness. See the person. Don't have it be the situation where you're going through the checkout at the store and you never even realized the human being that was scanning up your products, right? The things you're buying, your groceries. Elevate that awareness. See other people and listen. I encourage listeners to write down one person they could mentor better and what they can do this week to move forward. Or think about a time where you were effectively mentored, how that made you feel, how it was done. And even if there's somebody just a little bit less experienced than you, think about how you can maybe help that person as well. Okay? If this episode hit home for you, share it with a friend. Better yet, share it with your team. We're going to keep digging in on these career development podcasts. I've got a podcast next week with, oh goodness, I've got brain farts here. I've got a lot of podcasts that I'm planning, but we're going to be industry proing with some awesome brewers. I'm working on something with Dr. Matt Winans. We're going to be talking yeast again coming up. So, keep your eyes peeled. Stay sharing this stuff. I really appreciate it. Do check out the Substack. Know that whenever you share stuff, like stuff, it definitely helps me. So, anyways, be good to your people, and I will catch up with you next time. I appreciate you joining us. Always leave your feedback. Cheers.